Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. Welcome to the final episode of the season. It's been a long time coming, but obviously we couldn't finish this season without a phenomenal guest. This one, guys, you lot have to subscribe, comment, like, share, because we did overtime for this one.
Yeah, you have to lock in for this one. This one, if you knew how many back and forth, bro, this day, that day, left, right, centre. Listen, it took a lot of work, but there's a reason why. We're ending it with a bang, inshallah.
Inshallah. So, welcome to none other than Dino.
I appreciate the hassle, but we're here anyways. we're here. You guys travel from Birmingham, so I'm going to make it worth your while.
Nah, we appreciate it. Well, listen, there are not many people on socials now that relatability is on level 1000. I think most guys can relate to him. I think the things you're doing right now, Allahumma barik, incredible. You know what I mean? And you're touching on things and counteracting people who are doing the opposite, complete opposite to you. There are a lot of incels, red pill, you name it. Yours is, listen, let's forget about all of that and focus on ourselves. You know what I mean? So I know you don't like to call yourself a life coach. I know you don't like to call yourself like somebody who's actually telling people what to do. If we had to box you in, what would it be? Like, who's Ahmed? Who's Dino?
I would say I'm a thought-provoking content creator, maybe like a thought leader.
Okay.
I think I like to give people new perspectives. I don't like to tell people to do X, Y, Z. And that's where my mission started from, because there was a lot of unanswered questions I had when I was growing up. And you know, when you grow up in an ethnic household, you're kind of just told to do things. Yeah. But this is the issue. For me, maybe it's a God-given gift from Allah, but for me, it's always been, you know, why are we like this? Why are we doing certain things? A lot of people don't question things. And it's like certain people are avoiding, they're disconnected. A lot of people going through loneliness, but people just live. And for me, I've always thought, to be fair, maybe growing up, I used to listen to a lot of, you could say, liberal content creators, you know, like the white content creators that are always asking the type of philosophical questions of like, what are we doing here kind of thing. It isn't good to go too extreme, but it always used to make me think, why are we the way we are? You know, why are ethnic parents the way they are? And, you know, one day I decided to pick up a camera and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I just want to take it back a little bit. You know, growing up, what was life like?
I grew up in a good household, man. Never going to complain. I'm not going to romanticize struggle here. So for me, it's always been like two-parent household. You know, dad's a TFL engineer. Mum's a Dixie teacher. But, you know, throughout that perfect upbringing, there was always cracks. I think you can't always have perfection. You know, I don't think I should use that word. But growing up, for me, I'm like the oldest son. I got an older sister, two younger brothers. But everything for some reason felt weird to me. I kind of call myself the black sheep in the house. I always used to question things, you know. But when you're younger, even in school, we're never taught that questioning things is normal. You're kind of told, you know, if you question, no, you shouldn't. The right answer is this. So I kind of just went on my own journey. I think if you were to ask my parents, they would just say I was a stubborn kid, you know, kind of just done my own thing, tried my own things. Obviously, sometimes your parents will be angry at you, but for me, it's always been like that. But I will never ever look at my upbringing and say, oh, my parents did X, Y, Z, because they tried their best. And they're still trying their best. But, you know, when you look at the way ethnic parents manage themselves and the way kids turn out, now we're starting to notice, and this is why voices like mine are so important, because now you're starting to notice, because of this technological age, it doesn't matter how spiritually sound you are, or it doesn't matter how, I don't know, how much of a military mindset you have in terms of raising your kids, the cracks are now starting to show. So I'm happy I picked up a camera, in all honesty, even though I was a bit of a private person. You know, I never had a social media account apart from burnout accounts. Like, I never used to post pictures. You can ask my friends, like, you'll never see me picking up a camera just chatting. I used to like to live a private life, but took a leap of faith, and now we're starting to see why voices like mine and the message that we're pushing is so important, because you know, a lot of people are struggling, man.
100%, bro. And you know, before we take a more of a deep dive into, you know, what it is that you're kind of pushing out, the content that you're pushing out, the messaging behind behind Dino and what you're trying to propagate, I just want to kind of eye in a little bit more, because look, you know, for certain people, it's a natural transition from doing what they're doing to going into content creation in a big way, right? So, you know, they would have been on social media a lot. So, you know, it's not a massive step. As you said, no social media presence, pretty private guy. So what is that mindset shift in your mind that's making you think, okay, there's something I want to accomplish. I've never done this before. I think the way to go through it is through content creation. What is that shift?
Could you clarify that though? Like, are you saying specifically where did this mission start from?
Specifically regarding content creation, right? So you decided to pick up a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why a camera? Especially considering you're not from that background. It's not necessarily your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Why a camera? Why is that? Why was that your method?
So, in all honesty, right, I've always been a creative person, but I wasn't around creative people, so I was forced to conform. But I used to journal a lot, right? I used to journal a lot. I talk to myself a lot. Some people shun it, but it's a very interesting thing when you've got a weird connection with yourself where you could just ask yourself why you're doing certain things. So for me, picking up a camera was scary because I've always been a private person. So to kind of make that leap and expose yourself to the world, which is probably the most vulnerable you'll ever be, was a necessary evil, but it took 2.5 years to build myself up to post my first video. A lot of procrastination, a lot of telling myself there has to be a way around it. I tried the faceless thing, didn't work. But funnily enough, I started with fitness content.
Okay.
So for me, I've always known what I wanted to talk about, but I think fitness was the societally acceptable thing. Because how many ethnic people do you see that are able to talk about things that make you think, right, without being seen as cringe? Especially when you don't have any proof of concept. When you first start something, you know, especially as a man from an ethnic background, you know, you could say I'm black, Somali, whatever you call it. If I just posted a video, people would just say, that's cringe, man, why are you doing that, bro? So I just thought, you know, just to ease myself in, I'm doing a bit of fitness, might as well just put the fitness thing out there. But then after like a month or so, I kind of quit on that. And then I took a few months break. We'll touch on that later, but I kind of moved to the UAE. And then when I kind of had space away from everyone, it was more sort of a thing where, okay, now there's no one in proximity that could judge me.
Yeah.
Let me just talk about what I want to talk about. And then it's just been building from there.
So one thing I like, one thing I like is the fact that you don't care what people think.
I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have an interesting way of explaining it to people.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why he waited until he went to UAE.
Okay.
I get that. I get that.
I think we all care about what people
do.
think, and just
You can't help it really. At the end of the day.
No, but it's like a primal thing. It's always been a part of us, right?
100%.
So that's how you survive in a tribe.
course.
But my version is, it's not that you stop caring about what people think. You have what I call undeniable proof to kind of dismiss it. So the way I see it is, to go from A to B, when you're starting something, to gaining a bit of traction, you're going to have to go through it. You don't stop caring about what people think. You're just going to have to kind of build up mini wins to kind of then tell yourself, you know what? I've kind of done this. I've made $1. I've lost 20 pounds. You know, I've posted my first video. You're just collecting small wins. So now when someone questions you and says something that's dismissive or something negative, you kind of weigh it out with what you have. But in the position that I'm in right now, because I've done so many things, anyone that throws anything my way, sometimes I think about, I'm like, damn, why did that person say that? But then instantly, or almost instinctively, it's like, I just remember all the things I've done and all the good I've done and what people have told me, and then the mission continues. But to kind of go back to the point is, like, we don't ever stop caring about what people think. It's just that you're so grounded in who you are that it's like, you just kind of dismiss it.
Okay. So to rephrase it, you care about people if they're important enough.
Yeah.
You know? So how did you have a mind shift from, you know, for example, now, your parents, your family, they have a weight. The words have weight. So when they say something, you can ponder over it for months or weeks even. You know what I mean? So you think, damn, man. You know what I mean? You're trying to prove that, obviously, whatever you're doing, you're not wasting your time. You're not wasting, you know what I mean? Like, as guys going through secondary school, college, there's that herd mentality that most of us fall into, you know what I mean? And depending on the group of friends you have, you might all be, like, you might have a group of creatives, for example, and it's very easy for you to become a creative.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something completely different in in our community, for example, like talking about yourself or like reflecting a lot or kind of shedding a light on yourself, how did you think people would like receive that if you started it in London as opposed to going Dubai?
It's interesting, you know, I always think about that. I'm gonna take the coward's way out and say I probably would have not done it.
Yeah.
You reckon?
Sometimes it's like, you know, as I said, to go from A to B, your why, and I guess the pain that pushes you forward has to be so much. And I don't think I had it. But when I was away from people, it's like you get a breath of fresh air. And it taught me a lot. Sometimes I always tell people, you know, when you travel, you go places, you stay in different places, you meet different people, you start realizing like not everyone thinks the same way you do, and not everyone thinks the same way the people around you do. Yeah. But to kind of answer your question, I don't actually know. And it would have pained me had I never done or I never moved out and I never took that leap. Because, you know, to kind of get back to your point, I spent like 5 years of my life thinking about ways of expressing myself. But I picked up what I call this nonchalant gimmick. People used to kind of see me as this chill guy. But the reality was I was insecure about putting myself out there and doing the things I wanted to do, which is what a lot of young people do nowadays. They kind of reside behind the coolness of, you know, I can't bother, why would I even do that, that's dead. But the reality is they probably want to do it, but they don't want to be seen trying. And honestly, man, I feel like just the effect it has being here, and I'm not trying to dissuade people here saying it's not possible, because there's a lot of people doing things now, but the environment definitely has a big effect, and it starts from your home. You know, so it's just what it was.
And the reason why I wanted to ask you that question is because if somebody's listening to it now and thinking, I've always wanted to start something, and then sometimes you haven't looked at the environment you're in, sometimes just stepping away from that environment can make a massive difference. Because when we went to uni, SSCOPE started when we were away from Birmingham. We didn't start it in Birmingham, really and truly, you know what I mean? And when we came back to Birmingham, and YouTube wasn't a thing back then. Even getting people on
you're exposing ages, bro. You know what I mean?
But when we were getting people to come onto episodes, or when we were talking about issues and taboo topics that at the time no one really wanted to talk about, everyone was like, I love what you're doing, keep doing it, but it's not my thing, you know. You know what I mean? So, but it had to take us leaving the city and just doing it for us to realize, actually, you know, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? And for a lot of guys, we kind of, we're in this trance for 10 years, 15 years, not because we want to be in it, but because we don't want to stand out. We don't want to be that black sheep. You know, so it's very important to sometimes look at it and kind of sit down with yourself, like you said, journal, and then say, what do you really want? And the one question for us, there's so many people, for example, for me, that ask, I want to start YouTube, or I want to become a doctor, and I think, why? What is it about being a doctor? What is it about starting a YouTube? Because if you start, you will quit. I mean, so if you don't know your why, which you did, you know what I mean? But if you don't know your why, it becomes very, very difficult to maintain all that. So, no, mashallah, it's one of those things where, you know, we don't realize how much society and family and upbringing and just the environment we're in has an impact. What year did you go to Dubai?
2 years now, so 2023 summer.
Okay. Yeah. And how is that moving away from big London?
It was an interesting transition, man. It was interesting, a lot of learning to do. And obviously that was the first time away from my mum's house. But it taught me a lot of lessons. And you know, sometimes I do believe wherever you go, it's not necessarily Dubai, like you can go anywhere in the world, because it forces you out of your comfort zone. And depending on how inclined you are to meeting and talking to new people, is always a positive. But to kind of go back to a point you made earlier, you said like your why has to be strong. I just believe you get started and your why grows. Because to go back to when I first started, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Didn't really cross my mind. Sometimes you get ideas the more you put things out into the world and the more data it gives you. So for me, if someone asked me, you know, I want to start YouTube, I'll say, yes, start it. You know, you kind of learn things along the way, because trying to predict the end or what your big goal is going to be without having started leads to overthinking, and I'm assuming both of you guys can agree to that, right?
100%.
But for me, it's like I've always told people, yo, just start something, do it, because the very essence of doing something gives you data, and then you can actually then ask yourself, what can I do with this? Whereas trying to hypothesize, or I guess trying to theorize everything, going on the internet, how do I do this? If you keep doing that, I believe you actually reduce that muscle in your mind that allows you to just keep moving forward. And that's why a lot of people are just stuck in that paralysis state. You know, how many people do you know in your life that just plan things? Oh, I want to do this. You come back 6 months later. What are you saying you started it? Now I'm trying to do this thing. It doesn't work.
Yeah. You know what? You're absolutely right, bro. And I think it's really interesting. I remember, I think it was Steve Bartlett who said that the cost of success is embarrassment, especially in the beginning. And the idea there is that, look, you have to do things that you're uncomfortable with, and that initial period is going to be difficult. And he said himself, he's pretty young himself. He said in the beginning when he would post content, a lot of his boys, you know, would take the piss out of him, and you know, people would be like, he's cringy, this, that. And look at him now. And that what's really interesting is that story is almost de facto the same experience for every person in that kind of space, or who's trying to do something different. Because as you said, you know, from A to B, you're going from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
You know, you're creating something that wasn't there before. So people don't have a point of reference for what you're trying to do. All they know is you're going out of the herd, you're doing something completely different, and different is bad.
Yeah.
Different is bad. It makes people uncomfortable. Different, you know what I mean? So it's only, as you said, once you start racking up these little wins and people start seeing the fruits of your labor, and they get that kind of biased confirmation that, okay, you know, this is clearly something that's working, or you're getting that positive feedback from other people, then it becomes safe again to be able to look, okay, do you know what? Oh, this is actually decent, or this is good. It's interesting what you said, bro, you know, about growing up, how you were the kind of kid who always ask questions. I'm going to take a wild shot in the dark and say, you weren't the teacher's favorite student.
I've been suspended over 10 times, so I'm pretty swollen.
That was just...
Do you know, bro? It's so funny because I really resonate with that, because I was that kid as well. And it's really interesting, bro, because these institutions are not set up for kids that are curious, that are inquisitive. And I really think that, look, if you or I were provided an intellectual space where they actually engaged us and our questions and our energy, instead of immediately just identifying it as disruptive or as negative or as bad, it might have been a different experience. And I think it would be a different experience for a lot of these kids growing up now.
There was something just to add to that, right? There was something interesting I was learning, right, recently, where maybe now we've got a lot more education, but the amount of kids that are undiagnosed autistic or undiagnosed with ADHD, and then they go about their whole lives not fitting in, right? And they obviously don't do well in academia, and then they go down a life of crime. And they were actually just showing the statistic where some people that, or most people that actually go from just being normal kids to go into a life of crime was because they weren't given a creative space for them to just express themselves. Because now we're getting into the position where, because, education is kind of becoming common, you're kind of knowing that people learn in different ways, people adapt in different ways. But it's so interesting because you could see someone homeless right now, or someone that's just in a life of crime, completely ridden. But once upon a time, they were just that disruptive kid in school that just probably had ADHD, hyperactivity. And because it wasn't diagnosed, they tried to treat him the same way you treat other people. And because he then thought to himself, yo, this is not for me. And then he failed school, and then there's no other outlet for him. And you see how like a lack of education can affect everyone. And even in terms of households, man, I think ethnic parents are some of the worst when it comes to acknowledging these things and being open to the fact that your son or your daughter is different. You try to just fit them in the same shoes that everyone's worn. And if they don't, you kind of shun them out. Oh, there's something wrong with you. It's pretty unfortunate, man. That's why it's like education is so important. And that's what we need more than ever now.
100%. I think that comes with the ignorance that the older generation, they've been on survival mode for so long that now you know, we have the privilege to educate ourselves. We have the privilege. We have the privilege to, you know, kind of understand that there are so many different ways to learn. People can be so different, but I think one of the reasons why I love what you're doing is because it's our responsibility now to kind of show what we know, kind of shed a light on how to still become successful without following the traditional kind of way, and that perception and perspective is so different for so many different people, you know what I mean? You don't need to take the traditional way, you don't need to think how everyone thinks, you know what I mean? But I think for what our parents and that generation could do, they've done. If they have given this new generation, the first generation to grow up in the West, the tools to at least think for themselves, that's enough. Which sometimes lacks.
Do you think so?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's not a given for everyone.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, they get that depending on who your parents are, the household you grew up in, the environment you grew up in, the people you were around. The more you see people who kind of break barriers and kind of reach for the stars, you're more likely to become rich if you're around people who are rich. So I think one of the things some parents did is choose the environment and the schools and the duksis that they went to. You know what I mean? For us, for example, although we live in Birmingham, we didn't live in an area which was full of Somalis.
Wow.
There were enough Somalis to survive so that you don't get bullied or stand out, whatever. But we didn't go to like the Small Heath, for example, Spark Hill, Sparkbrook, Neutral, where there was hundreds of Somalis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at the time, I never understood it as a kid. But my dad was like, no, you want to have enough to have friends around you that are Somali, but so that when you see things don't become normal to you. If the people that are messing around are all Somali, if you know the people that are doing well are Somali, you just get so desensitized to everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if, as a parent, if you can say no, we don't, as Somalis or as Muslims, we don't do this. As a kid, that makes more sense to you. But if the people looting are Somali or Muslim, and the people doing well are Muslim, the lines just get blurred.
100%. And I think that's where the benefit is in terms of what our parents try to do with the time they have and with the capacities that they've had. Dino, just to get us back on track again, before we start to kind of go into detail about the self-work or the journey that you've started with your community and that you're pushing kind of across all platforms, and we really want to hear about that. You spoke about how education is really important and how it usually is one of the only pathways that people from certain backgrounds have towards, social mobility or a life not similar to the people around them, or a life of crime, so on and so forth. You also mentioned, you teased us when you said that you're an inquisitive child, but you're also expelled about 10 times. Yeah. Allah back, those who do know you know that you're now in a very, very good career, well-paying career, established career. Give us a kind of quick journey and how you went from being excluded 10 times to your higher education journey and landing into the career you're in right now, before we kind of catapult into self-work.
Okay, so just to give you a fast overview, I was always an academic student, just to add that.
Okay.
So I wasn't just bad.
Yeah, that's a little disclaimer, isn't it?
And I think the reason why my parents used to cope with it is because I genuinely used to get good grades. I was an A student in GCSEs and A levels. Okay. And for A levels, just a little flex, I've done maths, chemistry, biology, and psychology.
Okay, I love that. One more time.
No, I'm joking. I've done maths, chemistry, biology, and psychology.
Yeah.
And then I went to university because I got good grades and I got unconditional to study optometry, right, which is glasses. But here's the first question I had when I was in that state, but I kind of just shrugged it off. Do I want to do this, or do people want me to do this? Like, you know, when you're young, you're kind of just stuck in this transient phase of, what the hell am I even doing? Because, you know, you go from primary school, secondary school, college, and then university, but you're just on this, you know, this path of, you know, someone's just kind of pushing you. But then I shrugged it off, so I just asked someone, believe it or not, I said, I don't know what to do. Someone said, do pharmacy. I wrote out my personal statement, and then last second, someone told me about optometry, never heard of it in my life. And I said, how much do they pay? They said, yeah, they get like good amount of salary, good money. I said, yeah, just whatever. I've done my personal statement. I sent it off, and then the City University, they're the only university in London that do it, and they gave me unconditional. So I went to university, did my first year, and then that question came up again. I asked myself, what the hell am I doing? Long story short, kind of just became the social butterfly, started meeting new people, went to all of these societies in university, like Somali Society, and you know it goes downhill from there. You know, it goes downhill from there. And then I just spent most of my time socializing, and it took me away from my studies. And then I failed this exam, a practical actually. Then, funnily enough, throughout that time, I was situationally depressed, but I'm only saying this because of education. That time, I genuinely thought I was depressed. Because I was spending my time socializing, I was doing something I didn't want to do, and I was just genuinely living like a degenerate, bro. Waking up late, dragging myself to uni just to chill with people, go out to eat, and then come back home at like 11 p.m. My parents would say, where were you? Just at uni, sit there on my phone till like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, go sleep. I was doing that for a while, so then I took a deferred year. So I kind of just took a break. And you know, God bless my tutor, a white guy. He was so cool. Like every time I would talk to him, he was the only person in my life that used to speak to me with an open mind, not judgmental. He's like, okay, like what is it that you want? He was asking me a lot of open-ended questions. Long story short, took a deferred year, wasted my whole time, right? Only good things, I guess, is I got my license, I got a job, I was working, I was driving, I was just doing my own thing. And then now, fast forward a year later, this was lockdown, January. I come back now, and my progress into second year or second term of second year was contingent upon me passing that practical. Failed that practical because obviously I was out for a year. And then when I failed, I remember I went back to my tutor and he said, unfortunately, the cases, and it's such a weird case where he said, you're gonna have to appeal. There's no, you know, there's probably a chance that they won't accept it, but you're gonna have to continue to finish the term with hopes that they accept it. And I said, if they don't accept it, I basically wasted it. He goes, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm dropping out. That's literally what I said to him. And he was so cool because, as crazy as it sounds, I used to cry to him. I don't tell people this, right? Only because I just didn't know what to do. You go back home, it's like your parents saying, well, yeah, go to university, what are you doing with your life? And just genuinely, I don't even know where he is right now. You know, he's probably not gonna watch this, but like, coolest guy ever. Like, he was the only person that taught me emotion regulation is a real thing, by the way. Because you're just a young kid, dysregulated, you don't know what to do with your life. You're just thinking all kinds of weird thoughts, you know, even the worst thoughts possible. And he just sat with me, he just said, yo, you know, life isn't over from here. He said, if you do take this decision, I will respect it. And, you know, he said, you came in here with these grades. He was reassuring me. And he said to me, you know, if things don't work out, you can still do something. You know, you're 20, your life's ahead of you. There's so many things that you can do. And then he said, if you do stay, I promise I'll support you and I'll try to talk to the governing board and see if we can sort something out. But I just said, honestly, I'm just going to drop out. I've kind of been dragging my feet for a while. Anyways, that happened. Parted ways, never saw him again. And then that's when the journey of what the hell am I doing with my life started. Parents weren't happy, of course, but, you know, it was set in stone, is what it is. So now it was more of a case where for the next year, I was just swinging, trying out. I remember first thing I done was learn how to program. So I done HTML, CSS, and I started JavaScript. I wanted to become a front-end developer. I quit after 3.5 months because I could never see myself just typing away. Then I got into the whole making money online. I was doing affiliate marketing. I know it's a bit long-winded, and then I kind of got into a marketing agency, wanted to do that, then it didn't work. Then I got into copywriting, so I was a copywriter for a year actually. And it was good, it was interesting, good money at that age, that 31k salary, that was the starting, which was good at that time. And then I remember
better than most graduates.
Because I really sold myself. I actually put a lot of work into landing that role. It was for a South African company. And anyways, point I'm saying is, then I was at football one time, and some guy just told me about tech sales. So I'm in software sales now. And he just told me about tech sales. He's like, yo, like, what do you do? I was like, I'm in copywriting. And I said, what do you do? He's tech sales. I said, what is that? I've never heard of it before. Then he explained it to me. I just like the idea of it. I said, oh, like, are they hiring? How do I get in? We took numbers. He sent me a few things on WhatsApp. Then he sent me some training things that he had that day. His company gave him. I just went through it, and then I just started applying. And then I got into tech sales. And then I've been in there since, from like late 2021 till pretty much now. And that's the thing that I used to kind of move abroad. So that's pretty much been my career history. But the only taking point from there was when I dropped out was the revelation that I realized you have to kind of do things, right? You can't just stay stagnant, because, you know, you go from a structured life to an unstructured. And scary thing about unstructured is you can wake up late, no one's gonna say anything. You can not do anything today, no one's gonna say anything. Yeah. So it's you to become responsible enough to kind of pick yourself up and keep pushing. But alhamdulillah, man, the only thing I'll give to myself, you know, my dad would just say, he would say, you're stubborn. He would say the other word, but I was just relentless. And alhamdulillah, man, just kept pushing, and that's pretty much my career overview.
Well, one question before we talk about self-work. So you said that you were situationally depressed. Yeah. And, you know, you've now gone from a place of, you've made a concrete decision that you're going to drop out. Did that concrete decision settle everything for you in your mind, or was it still a process that you had to go through to kind of push past, you know, how you were feeling mentally and get into a space where you're like, I have to be relentless in figuring out what the next move is?
Yeah. I think sometimes the way I explain it to people, the way I explain it to people sometimes is, you know, it's never going to make sense when you're doing it, but hindsight is a real thing, right? So sometimes when you look back, now it all makes sense to me, but I promise you in that moment, I didn't know what I was doing. But to kind of answer your question, did that feeling subside? No. I wouldn't say it intensified, because you kind of get back that element of, you know, a bit of space, bit of freedom. You realize there's no burden on your shoulder of, I have to kind of finish this university degree, but look what came with it. Oh, your friends are graduating university. Oh, would you ever go back? You know, you're young, you're just wasting your time right now. Oh, what is it? What are you actually doing? You know, if you kind of go like this for the next few years, you know, you might actually end up as a bum. Those things weigh down on you. And it's scary, because you as a young person who's naive, you're just sitting there thinking to yourself, I might be finished. But it's such bad advice. It's such bad advice. And now that I know what I know, because I went through it, it's like whenever someone comes to me, which is why a lot of young people look up to me, it's like I just tell them the reality of it, but also give them genuine practical steps without judging. If you do drop out, realistically speaking, your life's not over. You know, I don't know if you guys watch Gary Vee, but you know, anytime someone says, I'm telling you, you're a baby.
He said that to someone 30 something. I said, yes, sir. We're in it. You're a baby.
I'm 30. Oh, you're a baby. Yes. I don't go that extreme, but it's like it's true though, because you know the fact when he says you're a baby, it basically means you have so many chances in your life to reinvent yourself, 100%. Right? But you're the ultimate decider. You're the person that says no, I can't. But to kind of go back to your point, it's like the feeling didn't subside. It took a different turn. So whereas I was situationally depressed because I had this burden on my shoulders because I was doing something I didn't want to do, now that I kind of have the space to do what I wanted to do, now there's so many opinions. So it's a whole different lane, and it's hard to navigate that, bro.
I can imagine, bro. And you know, he's being very humble, but because I think tech sales and software sales, it's not as well known in the UK as it is in North America. North America, I mean, a lot of people know what it is, but you know, it's a very, very lucrative field, very well respected field, Allahumma barik, and the fact that you're able to not just crack into it, but work in it to the degree where Allahumma barik, now you've got the capacity where you can, relocate to the UAE is an incredible achievement from where you started, Allahumma barik. So that's a great overview of how we have the man that is sitting in front of us today. Talk to us now about that next step. So you've gone to Dubai now. You've had some space. You've decided to go all in on this. Tell me more about self-work. Tell me about the work that you do. Tell me about things that you've picked up on and the value that your community is getting from this kind of stuff.
Okay, so just to give you a bit of an overview, the self-work, we kind of focus on, we have it.
Sorry, all I'm dying.
We call it ad breaks.
Wallah. Everything's going to be crazy on this, bro.
So the self-work club, in a nutshell, it primarily focus on internal things, right? The way you view yourself, the thoughts you have, because that's what ultimately gives the outward results. So we primarily focus on confidence and communication. And the reason why I started it is a lot of us focus on outward things, you know, getting a good job, getting married, I guess getting in shape. These are all surface level things, outward things. But a lot of people are inwardly dysregulated. And you know, nowadays the whole loneliness pandemic, and if you even define loneliness, it's basically the subjective view of having disconnect. So you could be around a lot of people, but there's no meaningful connections with you and that person, therefore you're lonely. You don't have a safe space. Sometimes you're not seen. You know, you might be around people, you might just be the irrelevant guy in the group, or even in your family. And as we advance technologically, it's scary because I'm getting DMs regularly from parents, from kids, from married people, and they're just saying, like, I don't know how to communicate with this person, you know, we don't have connections. Nowadays people get married and they don't have connections. And it's not because they don't want connection. This is what people don't understand. Like, we live in this whole hyper-individualistic, capitalistic mindset, right? Of, you know, go get your thing, do it by yourself, self-made. Everyone wants connection, but nobody knows how to connect. And because we've been so scared out of it, nobody wants to make that first move anymore. Which is why, even if you listen to my podcast, I'm really big on nervous system regulation, you know, regulating your nervous system, emotional regulation, because ultimately that's how the world presents itself to you. You know, if you regulate yourself emotionally, your communication's on point, the way you handle your relationships are on point, you're outward, you know, you're not going to crash out randomly, you know, just because something bad happens to you. But the whole premise of the community is, I want to take it worldwide because I believe young people deserve a voice. And the reason why loneliness is, you know, increasing amongst young people is because they feel like they're not seen anymore. You know, I feel like in society, and I hope you guys can level with this, we focus on the successful people, the ones that are winning, and we also put our sympathy eggs into the basket of the people that are on the street and homeless and people that are selling drugs. You know, how do we get them off the street? What about the guy that's sitting in his room? What about the guy that's just playing games all day that doesn't know what to do with his life? That is more important than the guy who's on the street and the one who's winning, because that's a silent killer, right? And I was speaking to a lot of parents come up to me, by the way. I'm becoming a household hero for some people. But I was talking to a mum the other day, Asian mum, Bengali, but she's well spoken, and she watched my stuff coincidentally, and she was just talking to me, and she was basically saying how, you know, she got two sons. One's kind of outside, does his things all the time, but she doesn't know what he gets up to, but one's in the room all the time. And I asked her a question, didn't want to say anything. I said, which one do you think is worse? She tried to level with the one outside because he could get stabbed and da-da-da. But I said, what about the one indoors, right? Outside, the problems are actually known. Get hit by a car, you get stabbed, something random happens. Okay, but those things, you know, you can kind of level with them. But what happens in between those four walls? And sometimes, you know, idle minds are very dangerous. At least the person outside is seeing humans, he's interacting with people here and there. But the amount of kids, you'll be surprised, bro, the amount of kids are at home. Bear in mind, when I say kids, you can go from 15 to 30. You know, the spectrum's wild. I just say kids because we're all kids at the end of the day. We've all got that inner child. Just to kind of reference that. Bro, between 15 and 30, people just indoors, not going out. And as I said, even if they do go out, because there's no meaningful connections, I don't ask you, yo, like, how's your life? You know, how's things going? Is everything good? And we don't have those connections and conversations with each other. People feel lonely, and now they reside indoors. And because of technology, and we don't feel like we have to communicate with people because I could just send someone a message, the world's heading in a really bad place. And because of that, to kind of go back to my point of the whole self-work thing is, if we don't kind of put our foot at the door and say, you know what, we really need to teach these people how to regulate themselves and also how to communicate, I don't know what the future looks like, in all honesty.
It's scary. Well, I hear it's scary. Social media has a massive part to play. And I would say post-COVID, in hospitals, I think one of the highest diagnoses we see a lot is anxiety and depression. And for people who have, like Dino said in one of the events we went to, if you've touched grass before, it's easier for you to know that you're either a bit more introverted now, or you're spending a bit more time with yourself, and you can kind of regulate yourself, you know, and what you're going through. But for those who have grown up with the social media and don't know anything other than, you know, connecting with people online, you know, watching things constantly on all these gadgets we have, that human connection is definitely missing, you know. So for those people who message you, what's the percentage of boys in comparison to girls? Like, what would you say?
I would say it's pretty even.
Okay.
I think women, the only thing I give, not the only thing, that sounds crazy, but the things I give to women is they're very open with the way they are and the situation they're in. With men, it's so interesting where sometimes a kid will preface his message by saying, I don't want to glaze butt. Do you not think that's crazy?
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know glaze, basically. I don't want to beg it. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I find that concept.
You do know the lingo, yeah?
I did not know that.
You have to. Oh, no, me. You have to uptake, bro.
I'm media trained. I kind of have to break it down. But that's the point I'm making. Is I don't want to beg it, but. And it's crazy because that's the position we've got to. It's like people feel like in order to ask someone something, it's like I have to, you know, scrub my ego a bit and say I don't want to beg it. But the point I'm making is that a lot of people DM me, majority are females. Some are men, but even when men message me, it's like critical stage. It's like sometimes when they want to do something extremely drastic and extreme. And it's hard to navigate, but it's like, I could talk about this for so long, but from top to bottom, emotional connection is gone. In households now, and this is something I'm very vocal about, and I just want you guys to think about, you know, back in the days, we used to visit our relatives a lot. You know, there's used to be a lot of random things going on. Whether I wanted to go or not, besides the point. I used to be anti. But there used to be a lot of things going on. People would see each other a lot. Post-COVID now, I'm starting to notice that people have just lost the energy to see each other, and everyone's saying, I'm busy, I've got things to do. But the common denominator, the byproduct of all of that is nobody's connected anymore. So now you're with your family, but nobody's connected. Nowadays, I see parents brain rotting on YouTube Shorts, but they'll tell you delete TikTok. You know, I'm seeing them just disconnected on YouTube Shorts, just swiping all the time. And then the kid's just there. He has nothing to talk to the parent about, and because the parents themselves are dysregulated, which is the unfortunate reality, they then now just talk to the kid in a very demanding way. Oh, have you done this? Have you done this? Go this. Oh, did you go here? If you don't, they'll just shout you. There's no connection. Nobody asks, oh, how's your life? You know, how's your mental health? You know, is everything okay? And the problem is now from bottom to top is the same. Even people kind of slate me when I say this, but I feel like even mosques have become the same, where it's like, you know, back in the days, even if I go back 10 years ago, youth clubs was like, it was rife, you know, everywhere you go, there's a youth club. Everywhere you go, there's something that's happening in an institution, or even youth clubs, it doesn't have to be a mosque. Nowadays, it's like, even if you go somewhere and they're raising money and all of these things that they're focusing on are projects elsewhere when your own community is rotting to the core. And parents are just freely giving money saying, oh yeah, they're building the back of that mosque, but then your kid's just indoors all day doing nothing and has nowhere to go. So there's a lot of problems and there's not many people speaking about it. And the only thing we speak about, as I said, in society is, you know, gang violence, how do we stop knife crime? Statistically, the amount of kids that are doing knife crime is low. There's more kids indoors just brain rotting and doing nothing with their life 100%. Than the kids are outside. So again, it's about shifting your focus, and that's something a lot more people need to talk about.
Bro, I could not agree more. And you're absolutely right. So these spaces that are meant to be at the forefront of dealing with issues in our community, like mosques and all the rest of it, they either they're ill-equipped to identify what the problems are now, or they just don't have, you know, the strategy or the focus, whatever it is, to be able to understand where the fault lines are, what the problems are. As you said, these are silent killers. These are very new problems, problems that haven't existed before, and they require innovative solutions. They require to engage with the community in a completely different way, unfortunately, not enough is being done to really focus on that and identify it as a critical issue that it is. It's not just, oh, you know, they're always online, or at least they're at home. That's something they always say. At least they're at home.
It's crazy,
you know, which is crazy. It's crazy because you don't know the world that they're in, or the worlds that they're in, is 100 times bigger and scarier than whatever they can find outside. So it's I completely agree, bro.
How can you tackle it? How can you tackle the issue if you're not practicing what you're preaching? You know what I mean? If you're constantly on your phone, on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and then you tell them, get off the gadget, or go outside, or all of these things, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? So I think for us to help the young ones, us as adults kind of have to also regulate ourselves, you know what I mean, and regulate what we're consuming. Like I always say that for me, I don't have TikTok, never had it, but I knew I'd never wanted it, because once I get into that, I know myself. You know, if you have that addictive personality, you just keep on going. I deleted Twitter because I started post 2014. I realized that the way people use Twitter changed. It went from joking, having fun, and people just being creative and expressing themselves, to everything being factual, everyone moaning and complaining and just having a go at each other. And then you start consuming people's thoughts and ideologies and whatever. So I thought, why am I getting angry? This whole rage bit, getting angry about somebody else's opinion, you know what I mean? So I thought, yeah, I'm deleting this, you know what I mean? And for Instagram, it's like you post and you leave, you know? So if you don't regulate yourself as an adult, there's no way in hell we can help the next generation, because at least for us, we know life outside of social media, you know what I mean? But if we're glued to our phones now, you know what I mean? And then you're there, instead of kind of sitting down with the next generation, speaking to them, and you know, talking about something you have in common or whatever, or going on a trip somewhere. You're constantly glued on that phone, and the only time you look up, like Dino said, is just to tell them and instruct them about something. You know what I mean? So I think there needs to be a call for action, and I think it starts with talking about it, like Dino's doing. But what else can we do?
Honestly, I think talking about it is something that's very important. And also, I had a thought whilst you were speaking, right? Going back to the point I made earlier of why don't mosques or, you know, parents or elderly people do it, is because they've lived their whole lives being emotionally dysregulated and they got away with it, right? And you can get away with it when there's no social media, because nowadays it's like, for example, if you were someone that was a bit awkward back in the days and there was no social media, you still had to socialize with people because you had no choice.
No choice. Yeah.
So there's kind of like a trade-off there, where it's like you kind of build up some level of social skills because there's no form of disconnection for you, right? Before, if you were around people and you're just awkward and you're not connecting the conversation, you just kind of literally have to sit like this. Literally just sit like this.
You're not joking, man. You're sitting there, bro.
There's no way you can pick up your phone. And I think the whole concept of reparenting yourself is what I call it. Requires an element of vulnerability, and vulnerability a lot of people see as weakness, which is why people don't like talking about things that they're going through, which is why people don't like talking about these topics, and that's the very reason why ethnic communities, Somali communities, are really struggling, because it's purely reputation based. It's just shrouded in ego, where it's like nobody likes to talk about problems, where there's many cases where you'll be surprised at how many people that have DM me, and then they'll be like, oh, you know, my parents don't want to seek help, and my brother's been in his room all the time, and you know, they're just saying, you know, we don't want people to see us as a struggling family. Unfortunate. There's even a case where I knew a guy, and he was just normal, but he went through some stuff, and long story short, his way of coping was to lock himself in the room. Parents thought that's normal, as you said earlier. You know, being indoors or being in your room is not seen as bad. They think it's normal. Well, you know, goody good job. He's inside. He's calm. I know where he is at least. But it's crazy because I know where he is at least. It's literally like someone that's been locked in solitary confinement, and you don't care. You just slide food under. Right there, slide under. He will eat. You don't know what his mental health is saying. And that's the easiest way to fall off. But I think the whole thing about talking about it is so important, because you know, even the whole concept of watching X-rated content, nobody talks about it. It's like, why do you know how crazy it is that I usually tell my parents, I tell my friends, and I tell people, this should be the #1 normalized topic, because people are going to see it anyways. It's so wild that I was reading something that the average kid now has seen it multiple times in his life, from as young as 9 years old, right? It's unavoidable. So, but you're thinking in your house, you know, astaghfirullah, it's haram. How you, what are your kids doing? Sometimes I tell parents this way, I'm like, you know, God forbid, but I guarantee your kid has seen it or currently still watches it. But it's like just the way we've been wired, because if you look at it back in the days compared to now, they got away with it because there wasn't this emphasis, or there wasn't this big monster that's taking our attention in the form of social media. Nowadays, we've been drained socially. We've been drained mentally. So the point I'm making is, in order to kind of move forward, we need to understand that this is the new age, and in order to kind of get into this new age, we need to get rid of a lot of old wiring and programmings we had. But the way I see it, and this is the most cryptic message I put out there, is the older generation just has to kick rocks and go. Like, we shouldn't focus on them. When people say, oh, my parents this, bro, let them go. It's for you, obviously, if you're old enough, it's for you to kind of make that change, because there's people younger than you. For me, as I said, I'm 27 years old. There's kids that are 19 years old. There's kids that are 18 years old. And they're kind of going through that, where I have to then kind of position myself in a way of, you know what, there's still hope. You know, don't focus on your parents. You can't do anything about that. But that's just the way I see things. Like, we need to start normalizing these conversations and not shying away from them, honestly.
No, I agree. Well, and the scariest thing about our society now, well, I won't even say society, I will say in ethnic communities, we care too much about what another family thinks. So just to give an example, I remember before, like, as a student, I used to work in a mental health hospital, and it was a hospital maybe 60 or 70 miles away from Birmingham, and there was a Somali family who there was a Somali patient there, and parents used to come and visit. One of the shifts, I didn't know that there was a Somali patient there. I saw them, started helping them, you know, giving them the food, whatever, like from home. You know, I would share my lunch with them, because the food in hospitals most of the time is crap.
Yeah.
But the first thing the Somali mother said was, we left Birmingham not to see Somalis. What the hell are you doing here? You know what I mean? And I thought, what? Like, you know how your child is being treated here, how much racism and discrimination there are in some of these hospitals, when you go so much or so far away from these big cities that are used to, like, ethnic minorities, whatever. And you should be saying, alhamdulillah, there is somebody that looks like you in these hospitals that can help you. But it's because of the shame and trying to not be seen in these kind of situations that are leading our families and kids into situations where no one's seeking help. You know what I mean? And if somebody's stuck in a room where, you know, it is the Somali saying, where at least you know where he is. It's not a way out, you know, especially because before maybe there wasn't social media consumption and the internet, but now that's enough. That's not enough. At least if they're outside, you know what the dangers are. You know that, yes, you can. And I think when somebody is out there socializing with other people, at the very least, you can have that back and forth. You know, when a kid is messing around and is going outside and doing whatever he's doing, when you tell him, stop doing this, he'll argue with you. Do you know what I mean? He will say, no, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But when a kid is silent, whatever you tell them, and then they're like, okay. And you don't know what they're thinking, what their personality is like, what they're going through. That is so dangerous. So I agree. Well, we need to start talking about it. We need to start taking action. But also we need to start taking up spaces where we can help each other. You know, if we're not taking up spaces, it's not good enough an excuse to talk about the older generation anymore. You know what I mean?
100%.
Well, it's like now it's our responsibility, and there are so many people who constantly just complain. Like us, we're talking about it now, but there's so many people who will just talk about it and just continue with their lives. But it's a responsibility of ours to fill those voids, because if you don't, somebody else that maybe you don't agree with will be giving them information that they're consuming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, no, well, I think if we can leave with one final message from you, what would it be?
Kind of put me on the spot there. Try to build connections with people, deeper connections. Because ultimately, the way I see things is, you know, you can make money, you can live a good life, you know, you could drive fast cars, you can focus on your career. And even when he said earlier, you know, we kind of need to start talking about and doing things. I think one of the reasons why we don't do things anymore is because we are disconnected ourselves.
Fact.
Right? It's like nobody wants to reach out to each other anymore. I think even sometimes when you even think about it, you know, you see your list of contacts and you double guess yourself, should I message this person or not? Do you not think that's a crazy thing where it's like, you know that person, should I message that person or not, because it might be weird? Back in the days, people would just go and knock on each other's door, be like, oh, excuse me, is Abdi in? No, piss off. Cool. Okay, I'll go home. And it was so normal to kind of have that rejection, but we've lost the element of vulnerability. This is the point I was making to you guys, which is vulnerability. People just kind of see it as something as simple as, I don't want to message him because I don't want to seem desperate or weird. But that's just the thing I push out there all the time, is we need to start becoming connected with ourselves first by asking the right questions, you know, challenging all of our thoughts. And then trying to create connections with people, starting with your family, your friends, people around you. And it's going to be a hard task, honestly. You know, I think sometimes when I even try, I notice that the person doesn't even know how to respond to it anymore, you know. It's a weird time we live in all honesty, but I just feel like the more people that try, the more people that kind of go for it. I call it the be first concept, you know, be the first person to message someone, be the first person to initiate a motive or something with someone. Just be the first, but don't attach to the outcome. If the person says no, it is what it is. And I feel like we've become so scared of making that first move that everyone's just second guessing each other. You could be looking at your phone book, looking at my name, I could be doing the same thing, but we're both thinking, oh, you know, if I message him, it might be a bit weird, you know. And that's a stupid concept. So for me, it's just like, learn to be emotionally connected with yourself. And that's why I kind of have that whole podcast. And that's why I really challenge a lot of thinkings we've had. And a lot of people love it. I always end the episodes with a lot of thought-provoking questions, just to kind of challenge your own thinking. But I think that needs to be the next step, you know. We need to start creating third spaces where people can come together and have these conversations with obviously practicality on the back end. I don't want it to be a wallowing party, sad party.
100%.
It has to have a bit of practicality. But for me, it's like those third spaces, because young boys, just to kind of add to this, right? Young boys, the thing that they don't like is one-to-ones. It's a bit too intimate. And because they're not regulated and because they don't understand what vulnerability is, it's a bit too much. But when you kind of guys, or disguise it, I should say, under the umbrella of let's do something, have this space where people come together, as I said in that event where I call it anchoring, you know, you bring men, you obviously do football, something like that, football, boxing, wherever it may be, or even just games, and then have these talks there, you know, have these groups, have these conversations with them. And one last thing I'm going to mention is, you be the first person to take the mask off. This is one thing I teach, and what I mean by mask off is you show people that you're human first. You know, because if you're talking to a kid and he's seeing you as this perfect stoic guy that has no holes, he's going to feel intimidated. He's going to think to himself, why would I open up to this guy? But if you take your mask off first, whether it's in a friendship or even a productive conversation, and you show them, yo, I'm human, you know, I've been through this, I'm struggling with this, and, you know, I've been feeling a bit isolated recently. Oh, why? Have this conversation. You might make the person feel like, oh, wow, I've been struggling with something. Let me see if he has an input. So that's the thing I want to leave it with. Be the first person, and be the first person to take the mask off.
That's probably one of the best ways to end any conversation we've ever had. Allahu Barik. Dino, it's been an incredible conversation. You know, hopefully the first of many more, inshallah. And you know, as much as we'd like to hold him hostage for hours and end, we've kind of reached the end of the episode. I will say, Dino, that your approach and what you're doing is emblematic of exactly what we need, which is you're putting yourself out there. You've identified that there's a problem, and you said, I'm going to do my part in helping to resolve this through my way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and bless you in everything you do. And inshallah, as you said, bro, the more people do that, the more people get out of their own way and their own shadows and start setting up spaces, whether the third spaces, whatever it is, and start engaging with this at a wider level, people can realize what a problem is and feel less attacked on an individual basis, and hopefully we can see the kind of changes that we want to see in our respective communities. We're going to put all your links down below in the description box, your podcast, your platforms, inshallah. Thank you so much for your time, Dino. I've been Salman. We've had our good doctor, and with that we reach the end of the season. I think that's the first thing we've ever done in about 10 years.
How many episodes have you guys done?
It's been this is the 10th episode. So yeah.
Just a sec, we're just concluding it. So yeah, 10th episode of our first kind of coordinated season, inshallah. And yes, we're gonna take a bit of a break before season 2.
You have to, bro.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you guys for watching so much and joining us in this journey. It's been incredible guests. Yes, we're gonna take a bit of a break before season 2.
Yeah.
We'll catch you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.